Okay. Noting the hour and the presence of a quorum, I call the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so online at ActonTV's YouTube channel found at the top of our agenda. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on ActonTV's website at actontv.org. Okay, welcome. We're going to move right into public participation. So per our school committee policy BEDH, members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. Public participation will only take place at this time during the meeting, and speakers must be recognized by the chair before speaking. And as a reminder, committee members do not typically respond to comments during public participation. Is there anybody here for public participation tonight? Nope, just poli-sci. Welcome to the poli-sci class. We'll move on to the superintendent's update. Peter.
All right, good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. So, superintendent's update is very brief tonight. One celebration and then one kind of just informational announcement. Celebration is that you received an email earlier today that Congressman McGovern is visiting the high school food services program. You know, our food services program has gotten both state and national attention for a lot of the farm-to-table work that Kirsten Nelson and her team have been able to do. I just want to give them a lot of credit because they have put together, you know, a really exemplary program. We were recognized by DESE earlier this year with a state delegation that toured, and so now Congressman McGovern wants to come in, tour. That, you know, whenever a politician at that level comes in, it's usually a pretty last-minute thing. So there was quite an extensive list of dignitaries that are coming with him, but you're also invited. I was working quickly, so I had sent out that it was happening tomorrow, but it's actually next Monday. So if you're around during the day and want to join us, please, you know, email me and Julie, and we will give you instructions on how to join. So we're excited to host the congressman. I think what it would be fun is he's actually coming during lunch and wanted to be able to sit and talk to some kids. So that will be a cool experience, I think, for everyone. And then more on the downer side of things, tomorrow I am sending our inclement weather process out to our families. It's that time of year when we have to start thinking about, you know, the weather is not always conducive to schools opening as scheduled. You know, it's pretty much the same information that you would have received in prior years. We did try and put a little more emphasis toward the end of the memo, though, on clarifying for our student drivers and their families that we can't plan school opening around our student drivers. Student drivers have a range of experience of like 1 day before a snowstorm all the way up to potentially 2 years. You know, so we plan our snow days around, you know, our buses being able to operate, us being able to staff our schools appropriately, and, you know, kind of that minimal level of being able to navigate the community. But we do need families to really take the lead in determining whether or not their students are safe to drive on roads, because we don't know the individual driving abilities of young students, and so their families know that better than we do, and we really have to rely on them. So we are making sure that that's clear where the responsibility for that lies. So that was it.
Thanks, Peter. All right, it's a record 4 minutes into the meeting, and we're already on to new business. First item of new business is the FY26 budget development schedule and guidelines. Becca.
All right, so every year the budget subcommittee meets to create a schedule for both budget subcommittee meetings as well as presentations to the broader school committee. And we also create guidelines that sort of shape our work over the year to draft the coming budget. So this is the first read of the district's FY26 budget development schedule and the FY26 budget guidelines, and you have 4 different attachments in your packet. The draft schedule and guidelines were developed with input from the administration and the budget subcommittee, and we're seeking feedback from all of the school committee members on both the schedule and the guidelines, and we'll seek a vote at our next school committee meeting, which is November 21st.
Not our next, the one after our next.
The one after our next, November 21st. So this is our first read, and then we'd like the feedback back within a month if possible. All right, so you can look at the timeline. We did add back the Budget Saturday workshop, since that went really well last year, and we got really great feedback about how, people felt it was a great opportunity to all get together and really do a deep dive and answer all the questions and, dig into anything anybody, wanted to bring up. So we did put that in here. That's for February 8th. We had kind of a tight timeline to be able to stick things in with vacation days and everything, so hopefully we can get a good number of people there. And then we have all the way down to the two town meetings in May, which will be here before we know it. And then we have the more detailed breakdown of exactly what we're going to be working on and presenting on the more detailed attachment. And then the budget guidelines themselves. So I'll, kind of give like a brief overview of these. I'd like you all to read them, on your own time and really think deeply about how we want to go about crafting the budget for this year, keeping in mind everything that happened last year, the override, and our need to really bring the community together. We did want to, have some aspirational elements to this. We didn't want to be all doom and gloom, but we are fully committed to increasing capital funding, making sure that, we're taking care of our facilities and thinking in the long term, as well as, looking into class sizes and really, incorporating any recommendations from the elementary budget task force as we can, in real time. Some things will take longer to implement, some things will be a little bit faster, and, we'll try to, prioritize things as we can. Utilizing staff attrition to sort of, just find ways to make the budget work. But we also did add in, again this year, reducing tuition for kindergarten families, because that's a value that we've all agreed that we hold dear, and so we do need to make it a priority. And it is an aspiration for us to do that and then keep going. So that's on here as well. So yeah, if we get feedback within a month, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any questions or comments right now on the budget timeline or guidelines? Seeing none, we will move on to policy updates. This is a first read on a number of policies. Liz, do you want to start us off on this?
Sure. So we have the policy subcommittee is going through a lot of policies that just need to be updated to stay in line with the current regulations for the state of Massachusetts. And these three are ones that we recently identified and needed to make updates to as well. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah, just to give you all a bit of context. So these three actually are related to recent changes by the federal government around updating Title IX regulations. So the federal government, this current administration, has modified various parts of Title IX, which is around sex-based discrimination and harassment in educational settings. And so those were put into effect in August. So legal counsel has shared with many school districts that we have to update our language to reflect that, both in terms of our policy and procedures. So these three policies are the ones who, that have language and guidance that's related to Title IX. So it's just the non-discrimination policy, which I think is AC, Prohibition of Harassment, which is ACAB, I believe, and then pregnant and parenting students, which is policy JIE. So that language comes straight from Stoneman Chandler, our legal counsel, in terms of the updates. Just to give a very quick overview, some of it really has to do with expanded definitions of sex-based harassment, definitions of what a hostile environment would look like or would include, some new grievance procedures, which is in the procedure part, which is not under review by school committee, although we'll certainly bring that to your attention when that's ready. Language around prohibition of retaliation, new protections for students who are pregnant or parenting, and sort of expanding the definition to sort of be explicit around who would qualify under that definition, and things like that. So the language that's before you in the draft language basically sort of takes out as a whole the previous language and then inserts the adapted language from legal counsel. So happy to answer any questions. We had a bit of a discussion in our policy subcommittee. There were some helpful questions just for us to think about when we get into the procedure piece that we're still working on, but this is policy language that has come from legal guidance.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I have one comment, which is it looks like policy AC, we still only have the final version.
Yeah, so thank you. This is my diligent training. I was only effective, I think, in 2 of them. So I think for the next one, we'll certainly make sure that we have the track changes for you so you can see what the differences are.
Great. And then my other question was in ACAB, we have black text, then we have red text with a strike through, and then we have red text all in. And I guess.
Correct. The black text is text that is in the policy that will remain unchanged. The red text that is struck through is the language that is going to be eliminated, and then the red text that's not struck through is the proposed changes.
Excellent. Thank you. Tori.
It's actually a lot prettier if you look at the public version of that. Having had some time to practice going back and forth between different versions, you get a different color for the new text and the public version.
I'm going to guess blue because that would be the.
I think it was green, actually.
Yeah, I feel like it was, green or blue.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Some growing pains with diligent in policies, but thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? So, Liz, when are we coming back to vote these? I'm putting you on the spot, but I think I probably know the answer.
I think, if we receive any questions in the interim, we'll certainly have to review, but if there doesn't seem to be substantial concern around content, then I would imagine our next school committee meeting, we could bring it for a second read and possible vote.
That was what I was going to say as well, if we don't get any feedback, because our next meeting for policy sub is tomorrow morning.
Is it?
Okay.
No, we postponed it.
We postponed it?
Don't scare me like that, Liz.
I'll
I gotta look at the
interject.
minutes again.
Typically, we're trying to put this all on a business meeting, so it would be 2 meetings from now. So November 21st would be and it's the same with the budget guidelines. So we have a meeting and a half's basically worth of time for people to provide
Yep.
feedback to policy sub, and then we'll vote this on the 21st.
Yeah, I think the 21st makes sense, because our next policy is November 8th, actually, Liz. So I think that works fine.
Thanks, I just still had it in there from before we postponed.
Okay. So let's say if you want feedback actioned on by the policy subcommittee before November 8th would be great. We'll be voting these November 21st. All right. Next item on the agenda is the proposed gift agreement with Open Door Theater. Andrew, I believe this one is yours to
Yes,
present.
thank you. So I'll give a quick overview of what's already in your summary cover letter. But in 2009, the district received a very generous gift from a resident at the time, Mr. Bernhan, of $500,000 in honor of his late wife, Jennifer Dornhan, who was very involved in the performing arts and Open Door Theater. And the agreement was that the gift would certainly support not only capital improvements at both the junior high and high school auditoriums, but then also support other elements of performing arts. As part of that, we certainly renamed the auditorium the Dragonfly Theater, which has some meaning to him and his late wife. But then in addition to that, the idea was that he wanted to secure a certain level of access and scheduling kind of preference for Open Door Theater with a fixed schedule and calendar that we built in collaboration with them. So Open Door Theater is a local nonprofit theater organization, and they annually use the junior high auditorium for their performances, and over time this relationship has evolved into one that's very collaborative, very constructive, and very successful for everyone. And so I think as the agreement is coming to a close, because it was about 15 years, there was an interest in extending that original arrangement, both with Mr. Hahn and with Open Door, with this sort of similar conditions, and with some amended an additional gift consideration that they wanted to offer as part of an extension. And so we bring that to you for your consideration. Overall, as I said, the relationship has gone quite well. I was the junior high principal for many of those years, and it just evolved into something that I think worked quite well for all parties involved. So happy to answer any questions, or Peter, if you want to expand on it.
You know, just one note that I think is important for school committee to understand is the gift amount that Open Door has given and Bernhan has given scheduling priority, but it does not remove fees. They still
Correct.
pay all the same fees that any community organization would pay to rent our facilities, electricity usage, things like that. So it's really just the priority in being able to get
Right.
scheduled.
Yeah, it codifies the schedule, but not anything else.
Yeah, so this is really a mutually beneficial gift that we think is important.
Thank you. All right, before we move on to questions, I will have to tell everybody that I do have a conflict of interest here, as my wife is on the board of Open Door. But I'll happily facilitate the conversation and the vote and then abstain when it comes time. Any questions or comments from the committee? Rebecca?
I just want to say, as somebody who has always loved both Open Door Theater and the junior high's theater program, I think it's wonderful when a community member can give back like that. I just, hope that it remains collaborative so that, the priority with scheduling, doesn't cause conflict.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then, let me see if there's language in here. Is there a motion to approve and accept with gratitude the proposed extension and modification of the 2009 restricted gift agreement made between the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District and both Mr. Bernhan and the Open Door Theater?
So moved.
Second. All right, we'll go with Ben, because he was on this side, and then Leela, who's on that side, for the second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Aye. Thank you. And thank you very much to Mr. Hahn for the generous donation. All right, ongoing business. Haven't even hit 7:30 yet. Ginny's going to owe me something. We are reviewing now, or going back to policy DBJ, the Budget Transfer Authority. This is our second read. Liz, did you receive any comments on the Budget Transfer Authority?
I did not.
Any comments from the committee on the Budget Transfer Authority policy?
We like it.
Then, would anybody like to make a motion?
So moved.
I didn't give you any motion
Darn it.
language, so you have to say
All right.
something.
Then I want to move to accept it as written.
Seconded. So I think what I heard you say is you made a motion to accept policy DBJ? Yes. Okay, so Tori made a motion to approve policy DBJ, and Ben made the second on that. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you. All right, FY25 Q1 financial report. Hi, Sherry. Hi. Welcome to the presenter's table.
Feels very empty.
It does. You still have the clicker. That's all that matters.
How we doing? All right. So there's not too much information to dive into because it only goes through the end of September. So when the revised budget was approved in June, the district budgeted $114.4 million for revenues. That number comes from Chapter 70, Regional Transportation, Charter School reimbursement, assessments to both towns, Medicaid reimbursement, rental income, and earnings on investments. Although it's really early in our projections, we could possibly have turnbacks of about $400,000. Our Chapter 70 funding was higher than anticipated as the state budget was approved at $104 per pupil increase when the standard is $30 per pupil. That's going to result in an additional $367,000 in Chapter 70 revenue for us. Transportation has a different story. Our budgeted revenue for transportation was overstated. Although in the past we've received up to 90% reimbursement rate, In actuality, we really need to be conservative and expect about a 73% reimbursement rate. So based on our submitted FY24 numbers, this is going to result in a shortfall of about $172,000 for transportation. We'll know more about revenue as the months go on. For our investment income, the current interest rates are still higher than expected, but they're starting to come back down. We'll know more by the second quarter, but we're estimating a surplus of about $200,000 in earnings. As for our projected turnbacks in the general fund, it's too early to determine what we may or may not have in June. More to come as we do second quarter and third quarter. And our E&D has been submitted, but we're waiting certification from the Department of Revenue. We called last week. There's 3 more districts ahead of us. But at a glance, if you look, we take our general ledger balance as of June 30th, which was about $2.8 million, and our net FY24 turnbacks, which was $974,000. We don't know the anticipated adjustments yet. And then the budgeted use of 25 assessments was 1,699 of E&D, and then we knew we had adjustments of $12,000 for like prepaids that we had to pull back out. So we're estimating that they're going to come back with about a 2.1 certification, which is 1.82% of our total appropriation for this year. Next, if you to get a better picture of the E&D, this is just the history. In the blue is the amounts that have been certified. And like I said, the 2.1, that's anticipated, that's not actual yet. And in the red is the funding that we have used to offset our budgets. As you can see from the last 5 years, the amounts that we've needed to offset the general fund have gone up. We are really hoping to turn that around in FY26 and hoping not to have to use any E&D to offset our budget. Next, we have the circuit breaker. This is also a 5-year trend of revenues coming in from the state, expenditures going out from the revolving account, and the fund balance moving forward. And looking at this, it's not a great trend. Expenditures in the last couple of years have been greater than the revenue coming in, but that's not just us, that's happening all around the Commonwealth. This fiscal year, we're offsetting our general fund budget by about $3.6 million. And currently, we're estimating a remaining balance at the end of the fiscal year of $576,000. Sometimes at the end of the year, if there wasn't extraordinary relief, they might sometimes bump up that last payment to us, but we won't know that until June. And lastly, we have our revolving accounts. So in the memo that was attached inside the agenda, you can actually see what's happened in the first quarter, and you'll actually have a breakdown of all the expenditures as well. This slide just represents where the top 5 revolving accounts ended as of June 30th for the last 5 years. Each color represents a different fiscal year. We've been slowly trying to work our balances back up since COVID. Our early education, which consists of all-day kindergarten as well as preschool, had a combined balance of $475,000. Community ed had a balance of $450,000, and extended day had a balance of $876,000. We ended the lunch program this year with $1.1 million, which was a little bit less, but we actually used some more towards our appropriation for extra salaries. And then for athletics, we purposefully left $100,000 in there so we wouldn't anticipate any kind of negative this year. So as a point of reference, there are district costs that are offset with the revolving accounts. They're built into the general fund, and they offset the utilities, the health insurance, and the salaries, and they're charged back to those departments. Okay, so it's still early. I don't have a ton of information about what's going to happen in June, but does anyone have any questions?
Peter's going to make
Yes,
2
sorry.
comments first.
Can you go back to E&D slide for 1 second, please?
Sure.
So I just, there we go. Just want to do a quick reminder for, school committee members, but also the community who may be watching. When we presented our budget at the town meetings, we had 0 budgeted in E&D. However, we then received more extraordinary health insurance claims that needed to be paid out at the end of that last fiscal year, which is why we had to go back and we had you re-vote a revised budget that is higher. And that is the use of E&D. Plus, there was a small amount also that was used to pay our consultant, New Solutions K-12, on the elementary budget task force. So those are the two one-time uses of E&D. Couple things that are noteworthy, especially thinking about the budget guidelines for next year. One is that the guidelines currently direct the administration to use zero in excess and deficiency going into next year, which is what we had intended to do this year. But then also there is explicit language saying that when we build the budget, it caps us at a 3% increase per school from you. But that 3% is based on the original budget presented at town meeting, not your revised budget. So what we're not doing is going back in, revising the budget, and then using that for more growth. We're going to actually rewind to the original voted budget and build off of that. So wanted to just point those two things out because I think they're noteworthy. And then if you can go to circuit breaker for 1 second as well. Sherry, can you just talk a little bit more about the circuit breaker, the actual that's coming in? Because I believe we anticipated that that would be a higher number, correct?
Yes. I actually printed it out in case anybody asked. Look at that. And I might have left it over there. I think I left it over there. But we were anticipating that we were going to have about 3.5 million come in, but it's really more like 4 million that's going to be coming in because our claims were so high. And when we submit our claims in May and June, that's how they figure out what our percentage is going to be for this year.
Wasn't it we thought it would be 4, but it's 3.5 because they
Yeah, I
reduced
went
the rate?
backwards.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not dyslexic, but sorry. Yes, opposite. And the other thing that is a little noteworthy is the transportation. They like to say that we were going to be reimbursed at 75% for transportation, but I believe it's 57%. And we find that out after the budget's all set up.
And I wanted to point that out because it was a comment that I had made to the representatives and senator when they came last time, is that, there were circuit breaker claims across the state were so much more significant than what they had seen in previous years that they had budgeted for circuit breaker reserve at the state level, but then because claims from every district were higher, they actually just reduced everyone's reimbursement rate. And so, I think having talked to Senator Eldridge, this was something that I had an explicit conversation with him about, that I think there's an opportunity to look at that. And, millionaires tax has been overperforming estimates, and, the state revenues, I think, get certified in December. But I think there is an opportunity to continue some advocacy with the legislature that once they certify those revenues, which are anticipated to be beyond projection, I think being able to come back maybe and fill in this circuit breaker gap is going to be an important piece of advocacy that we might be able to push for. So if you have connections with people, I would try and keep that conversation going.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the committee? I'll get us started. Yeah, you thought you were out of the hot seat. Can you go back to the E&D slide one? I think in the future, it would be helpful, Sherry, to also include in the data set what is the percentage of the E&D of our overall budget. So for me, what is concerning is that you see the blue bars on a decreasing line, but our budgets are increasing, and we're allowed to carry no more than 5% of our budget in E&D. We have a policy that says we should be at 4 and 4.5, and as you saw from the presentation, we're at about 1.82%. So we are way below, and we're trending in the wrong direction, which is why the guidelines say zero use of E&D. But I think it's important that we recognize the fact that we're well below even what we would want to indicate as a floor, which might be, I think, around 3%. So that was something I wanted to go to. And then I had a question about athletics. So we have the athletics revolving account, which you said is about 100,000 in it. Can you remind us, was the point this year in terms of raising the athletics fees to try to make athletics fully funded by user fees?
We were trying to not have a deficit at the end of the year. That was our biggest point. And even though we estimated what we're going to need for the fees. We don't know what the participation is going to be when we're doing the budget. So we were in a position where we could leave. We still had to offset some of the negatives in the athletics account with the general fund, but we were in a position where we could leave $100,000 on the bottom line there to help us with this year so we would not go into a deficit.
Great, thank you. Going around one more time. Ginny?
Thanks. So I was trying to listen and not write. So we, across the board, the state budgeted for circuit breaker, which is roughly supposed to reimburse districts for 75%. But because everybody's costs went up, they didn't have enough money. So did you say we got 57% of our costs reimbursed?
We're going to get approximately 57 for the transportation piece.
Right, okay.
They budget for up to 75%. But I believe what Peter was saying is that there were so many more claims that went in that they
Right.
weren't anticipating, but the pool of money stays the same.
Exactly. So, okay, so this is just for transportation, and, yeah. But, so are you, but is the amount of reimbursement that we're anticipating, or that's been approved, or however you say it, 57% of what we spent? Did you say 57%?
Only for the transportation piece. So they still are saying up to 75%
Right.
for the actual claims of tuitions.
Okay,
They're saying the transportation piece, because when they submit the claims, they have to do the net costs of both. They have to separate the tuition from the transportation. They're saying the reimbursements for the transportation are only going to be about 57%, but they're saying the tuition piece should still be up to 75. But it really is going to depend. I mean, every year they're going to ask all districts if they need extraordinary relief, and that's if they go 125% over.
so is that what we're still waiting for, that has the opportunity to keep the conversation open? Is that what you're talking about? I was confused.
Where I think there's an opportunity is to ask the legislature to revisit the total budget for circuit breaker and try and increase that so that they can fully fund the 75% across the board.
For transportation and tuition, or just transportation?
Both.
Okay, so we still don't know what we're getting for tuition?
Not yet. They pretty much give us that answer somewhere around January or February.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, thanks, Sherry. There is an HIT update that's on our desk.
I'm sitting here, so why
Yeah.
don't I just continue?
Please.
It's very quick, because we didn't have our meeting today. Our meeting is actually tomorrow morning. So because it was delayed, what I can tell you is that the Health Insurance Trust has a cash-on-hand value of $617,942. We've already paid our July and August claims, and our September claims bill came in, and it was a total of $23,657, of which $18,322 is ours, is the district's. So for our general fund that we have, after we pay that September claim, we still have a balance of $923,250 in there. So we're still going to be fine, but I won't have more of an update until tomorrow.
Thank you. Andrew, anything to add?
No.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Sherry. All right, we're going to move on to subcommittee and member reports. We will start with Policy Subcommittee.
That's not the order that's listed.
It is above that box.
It is?
Yes, so there's, if you're looking at the briefing notes, that's Julie's cheat sheet for me of what everybody's liaison is, so I don't have to go back to find that, but the actual bullet points first start with Policy Subcommittee.
All right, I was looking
And
at the
then next
notes.
will be Budget, and then next will be Elementary Task Force.
All right. The Policy Subcommittee met on Friday, October 11th at 7:30 a.m. via Zoom. We discussed a proposal from Resource Force to affirm our commitment to decarbonization. Since that commitment is interwoven with the entire district, the subcommittee intends to update our current sustainability policy with more specific language as to how to accomplish this goal, both within the guidelines of the Acton program, which we're a part of, and in addition to them. We'll collaborate with the capital subcommittee and other stakeholders to incorporate the new guidelines into the fabric of our district operations, so stay tuned. We also reviewed the 3 policies listed in the packet today for updates. Our next meeting will be Friday, November 8th at 7:30 a.m., and my calendar is updated.
Awesome, thank you. Budget sub.
I think you all heard most of what we discussed, but the Budget Subcommittee met on Monday, the 21st at 2 p.m. on Zoom. We got a preview of the first quarter revenues, but the expenses weren't ready at that point. So we went over those, and we also discussed the recent Boxborough Finance Committee meeting, which afforded an opportunity to hear some direct criticism of our current ongoing budget crafting efforts. And I think the takeaway here is that there continues to be a lot of questions and concern out in the community, and we need to redouble our efforts to connect with folks and make sure that everybody's concerns are addressed and taken seriously. We also finalized and improved the guidelines and schedule that you all heard about earlier, and the next budget subcommittee meeting will be November 18th at 2 p.m. on Zoom.
Thank you. Elementary Budget Task Force.
Continuing a theme. The Elementary Budget Task Force met Tuesday, October 22nd at 6:30 p.m. right here in the auditorium. Among our topics of discussion, we had how the task force's work fits within the school committee's overall approach to structural changes, and learning about the best practices that New Solutions K-12 has seen in finding budget savings, such as determining specialist and intervention staffing according to the number of sections needed and student needs, prioritizing student-facing time over meetings and paperwork for counselors, mental health, and behavioral staff, optimizing small group size and composition, establishing criteria to measure the effectiveness of programs when allocating funding. We had small groups discuss and share initial thoughts about how these practices might be implemented in our district and also potential barriers. Some of the points raised included interest in staffing to meet demonstrated student needs, interest in piloting new initiatives to determine their effectiveness before committing to implementation, some questions about whether staffing might be flexible as needs change throughout the year, some concerns about the relationship building necessary to implement staffing changes effectively, and some concerns that student-facing time might increase workloads without removing other responsibilities. Nate Levinson noticed that carefully planned implementation to any of these practices is critical to their success, and making hasty changes that are solely focused on saving money often results in failure. Next meeting of the Elementary Budget Task Force will be Tuesday, November 12th at 6:30 right here in the auditorium.
Thank you very much. All right, now we'll go through liaisons. Acton Finance Committee, Rebecca.
All right, this does continue the theme. The Acton Finance Committee met on Tuesday the 22nd at 7:30 p.m. at the Town Hall with some members joining on Zoom. Due to travel, I was forced to watch the recording instead of attend this time. And I think there was a discussion, after a presentation from Select Board member David Martin about a special town meeting. There was, a deep discussion after that about, the conservation of different properties and, different legalities, making sure that, all concerns are addressed there. And then they went into discussing their cost-cutting initiative, which is similar to our task force, as we discussed at other meetings, and also some discussion about our school elementary budget task force. I think there does continue to be skepticism about, our sincerity and how, seriously we're going to dig into some of these considerations for ways to save in the budget. But, I think there's also openness, so we'll just continue to work together. And their next meeting is going to be November 5th at 7:30, also at the Town Hall.
Thank you. I'm way out of order here, so I'm going to go back to either Tori or Yanshin for the last ALG meeting.
Didn't we give that last time?
Quite possibly.
Do you want it again?
Has there been one since we've met last?
No.
That's all we need to know.
Great.
Ben, Select Board.
All right, the Select Board met this past Monday. I watched it online earlier today because I was at another budget meeting on Tuesday in Reading, but that's not for here. Special town meeting has been scheduled for November the 25th. The Select Board unanimously voted to set both the meeting and the close of the warrant by tomorrow at noontime. Among key decisions, the board approved a lease for the Acton Food Pantry, established a policy designating the town manager and the select board chair as the approving authority for one-day alcoholic beverage licenses, and granted permission for hunting on specific Commonwealth properties. Additionally, updates from both the Public Works Building Committee and the Acton Leadership Group were provided.
Thank you. All right, I will give an update from the Boxborough Select Board meeting. There are 2 new police officers in Boxborough. The police department is now fully staffed, and I would highlight that one of the new police officers is a former dispatcher from the town of Boxborough, who also happens to be both a Blanchard and an ABRHS graduate. So we've got some hometown officers in Boxborough. Other items of note from the select board meeting is that somehow my family got nominated to create a menorah for the Christmas tree lighting and menorah lighting celebration, which is now moved, for everyone who was interested, from the Old Town Center, which is at the intersection of Hill and Middle Road, where it used to be, and now it's actually across the street from Blanchard in front of the police and fire station. A little bit of a smaller tree, but a little safer for the tree lighting ceremony. Liz, would you like to give us an update from the Boxborough Finance Committee meeting last week?
Oh, I would.
Thank you.
The Boxborough Finance, again, we're circling back to the theme. The Boxborough Finance Committee met on Tuesday, October 15th at 7 p.m. The committee invited the Boxborough Select Board and School Committee to discuss budget plans. Thank you to Tori and Adam for attending, as I was in Boston later than expected that evening. The discussion yielded some direct feedback on trying to keep the assessment as low as possible from the district. The concerns from Boxborough are that the town will be negotiating contracts and have several costly projects in the works. They will be meeting again on October 29th.
Excellent, thank you. And I will just highlight that one of the reasons that we went to that meeting was to go speak with the leadership of Boxborough and let them know where we were in our budget planning and give them an opportunity, knowing how tight their budget is this coming year, to give us some guidance with regards to where our budget numbers should be. And I know that the Finance Committee took that in. They've added another meeting to their schedule, and so hopefully they'll give us some feedback before we vote our budget guidelines so that we can have an informed budget process for both towns. Yes, Yan-Chen.
I just have a question for the Boxborough Finance Committee. Is it the assessment to be as low as possible, but also maintain a good quality of education? Are we open to that negotiation?
That is what we as the school committee need to navigate. Boxborough is, they're obviously coming from it from the taxpayer and, the budget. And their concern for, going into this budgeting year is how strained they already are within the limits of their budget and the worry of an increase that would put taxpayers at too much of a burden.
But they're open to negotiate, work with us to maintain the quality of education that AB is providing for the students, right?
They appreciate that we're taking their feedback and discussing with them.
Yangshan, I think that's a great comment. What I have heard universally in the 2 towns is there's a wide expectation that we will maintain a high quality of education. I think, where I hear a lot of the dialogue is that, we had a very big ask of the 2 communities last year, and I think, both Boxborough and the town of Acton recognized that we were in an extraordinary budget year, and both had put plans that they may have had on hold in order to allow us to move forward and, seek the override and be able to fund the schools. Even though it wasn't certainly at the level that we needed to fully fund schools, it was probably 2/3 of that. And so that was a significant ask of the 2 communities. I think both communities have important projects that they've been working on for a significant amount of time that are important to those communities. And I think what the interest I hear coming out of it is not having the district budget jeopardize projects that have been long in the works in the two communities. And I think that's the tension that we're coming across. I think for Boxborough, it's this understanding of, you know, they've needed a fire station and safety station for a long time, and this has been in the works for years and years. And they're understanding that they also used a lot of their reserves last year to avoid an override in the community, knowing that they had to come to the community with this ask for the safety building. And I think there's a real challenge for them of not, I think just understanding that it's going to be really challenging to try and seek an operational override and a debt exclusion for a fire station at the same time. And so, you know, I think it's just important from our lens to understand where we do hear concerns. It's because there's a feeling probably in the two towns that they've had to defer priorities of their own in order to help us maintain the quality of education. I don't think it's a desire to see us reduce the quality of education, but to live within the fiscal realities of the two towns, I think is going to be the important frame of reference for us for this budget season.
Thanks, Peter. All right, the only other one we have is the CPAC, but I know that their meeting was postponed from last night till next week, so we'll hear from Ginny and Vikram on that one next time. Next item on our agenda is the school committee goal update. I would love to hear how Diwali Fest went.
It was so fun. There were a lot of people. I will say that we probably had more interaction with our student population than with parents. We did not have very many people with questions. I did have a couple of questions, sort of like, you know, what does school committee do? How did this work for some newcomers in town? But we had a temporary tattoo station, and we gave out candy, and we, you know, were plenty busy throughout the day. It was a really great time to see the whole community.
Excellent.
And thank you, Lakshmi, for the decorations, and Yenshin for providing the candy.
Anybody else who was there have any feedback or comment on it?
It was a lot of fun.
It was really great. The folks that were attending were having a wonderful time. Nobody wanted to argue about the budget, which was weird, but we were there, ready for the fight. Didn't happen. It was really wonderful, and we found out just where to put the candy on the table to make sure it didn't melt.
Awesome. Yeah, it must have been a beautiful day. So thank you to everyone who helped and participated in that event. I'm glad that we were able to. Yenshin, I'll look at you. Any other updates from your end for community outreach?
Not really. I think that as we're heading into November and December, that things start to slow down. Like, I think people are in the holiday mode. I'd rather we, in the committee, like, we work on the list of Ask Me, and et cetera, and then we wait until when we have more substantial information, and then we will restart the community outreach dates and et cetera.
All right. Do we have like office hour coffee dates set yet?
Not for November and December. That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Other community outreach communication goal updates? Leela.
I just wanted to remind people that the deadline to register to vote or update your voter registration, that includes like updating your address, is October 26th, and that's this Saturday. You need to get your vote by mail applications to the town clerk by October 29th. And early voting is available now till November 1st in Acton and Boxborough. Actually, Boxborough is October 31st. Early voting is at respective town halls, and hours are posted on both municipal websites. Also, feel free to reach out to me if you need a reminder or can't find information about like where or when to vote. There are Massachusetts and federal candidates, as well as 5 ballot questions on the ballot.
Thank you. Any other updates from committee members? All right, then we will move on to our consent agenda. As a reminder, items on the consent agenda do not usually require discussion and are approved with one vote unless any member would like to hold an item for discussion and a separate vote. I'll read each item, and if a member would like it held, please say hold. Members do not need to have attended a meeting to vote on the minutes. Item number 1, approval of ABRSC meeting minutes of 10/10/24.
Can I hold those?
You may hold those. Item number 2, letter of support for crosswalk lights at Blanchard Elementary. And item number 3, approval of warrants as presented in the packet 10/24/24. All right, we had one item that was held. Wait, I have to read my cheat sheet here. Is there a motion to approve the items that were not held on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
That was Tori and then Leela. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. So we'll go to the approval of the meeting minutes. Leela, you had something there.
Very small.
Yep.
Under the list of present members, my name just has an extra A.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
We will let Beth know that, and we'll amend the minutes. So is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes now as amended with one less A?
So moved.
Second.
Ben, and then since it's Leela's name, we'll give her as the second. All of those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? That is unanimous. There's nothing in the FYI. Noting the hour, I would wonder if member,
Did we do the warrants?
yeah, they're in the consent agenda
Oh, so
now.
we don't have to read them
Yes.
anymore.
I'm wondering if member Kremer would like to make a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
So that was Ginny and Leela. All those in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. 51 minutes. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.